All right, today on The Breakthrough Effect, I'm talking with Vincent Infante, a man who became a fully licensed psychotherapist at just 23 years old, then revolutionized an entire industry by refusing to work within the bounds of a broken system. As the founder of Vincent Infante Coaching and creator of the groundbreaking TMC method, which combines therapy, mentoring, and coaching, Vin doesn't just help high performers optimize their success, he transforms the very narratives that define their lives. Featured as one of the top coaches to follow and endorsed by the powerhouses like Nick Santanastasso and David Meltzer, Vin brings a unique hybrid approach that very few can match. Get ready for a breakthrough conversation that will challenge the very narratives you've been telling yourself and reveal how to rewrite your story to create lasting transformation. Please welcome to the show, Vincent Infante. Thanks for joining me today, brother.
Thanks for having me. I hope I could live up to the intro.
I'm sure that you will. Most definitely. Let's get right into it. You talk about achieving self mastery. I want to know, from your opinion, what does that mean? A, and B, where in the world do people start to becoming masters of themselves?
Self mastery, boiled down into one sentence, is understanding that though you can't control what happens in life, you can always control how you respond to it. Where should people start? Foundations. Don't start in psychology, start in philosophy. Go all the way back to Stoicism and start there because I believe Stoicism is the foundation of honestly probably all modern behavioral psychology, and it's the biggest roots of self mastery you could find.
What is that? What does that mean? That went over my head. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, it's funny. A lot of people think that Stoics are just people, and if you've ever heard somebody who maybe doesn't have much affect, see, people use it wrong, where they'll be like, "Oh, that guy, he never shows emotion. He's Stoic," and that's sort of correct, but also not, because Stoics don't believe in not having emotions. They just understand that there are certain things you can control, certain things you could do, certain things you can't, and certain things you need to pay no attention or no mind to. In fact, one of the funnier stories that I came across when I was reading about lives of Stoics was this one guy, and he found out that he was going to be captured and killed. They wanted him for, I forgot what the specific crime was, but he was a very very revered person. Then the government turned on him and they wanted to kill him. And mind you, this was ancient times back in Greece, and so they would find you and they would kill you. And in a very funny stoic fashion, when he was told this news and somebody said you have to flee, they will find you and they will kill you, he's like, no, I'm gonna throw a party. And he gets super freaking drunk, has all the people he loves, he invites them over. They come the next day, they take him away while he's passed out on the floor, and they do the thing with him. But that's kind of what Stoicism is. It's about being able to look at the cards that fate has dealt you and accepting it, coming to terms with it, and then responding accordingly.
Is that where most, if not all, people go wrong? Because the answer to your very first question that I gave you is like understanding that you can only have so many controllables. Is that really kind of the foundation where you start? So we start like now peeling back. What do you think you have control of, or what are you wasting too much bandwidth in something that really isn't under your control?
100%. People that are suffering are people. Now, actually, there's something interesting in the language there. I said people who are suffering. So, suffering is a choice, pain is inevitable. So if suffering is a choice, but pain is inevitable, how does that break down? Well, you're going to experience some level of pain. You're going to have dissatisfaction. Someone close to you will pass away one day. You might not get the job you want. You might not get the income you want. You might get stabbed in the back by your best friend. Your wife might leave you. She might cheat on you. Your kid will hate you. There is going to be so many forms of pain that you will experience. And I just listed emotional pain. I didn't even list physical and all this other crap, right? I just gave you one category. So pain is inevitable. But suffering is the choice that we make when we let pain linger in our lives longer than we'd like it to. And so when you're looking at how do I step into mastery, how do I navigate life, what you're actually saying is, how can I focus on what I can do and let go of what I can't? Because if you could focus on what you can do, you can start building a different outcome and a better life. It's truly the difference between passively experiencing life or consciously creating it. And conscious creation requires interaction. So when people are suffering, usually what I've seen in my work with thousands of people over 16 years is the people that suffer are the people that are passively experiencing life. Their lives are the results of the things that they either did or more appropriately, usually did not do, that have contributed to them getting the outcomes that they have. And when you see people that are living really good lives, it's the same thing. It's a result of the things they did or did not do, but they probably put more emphasis on what they can do to interact in a way that gave them a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
That's that's crazy deep. We have a mutual friend, David Meltzer. I mentioned him on the intro. We were recently at an event, and there was one thing that he said at the event that we were both attending. He talked about this idea of relativity, right? Where you have the ability to choose to assign meaning, especially to the hard things. Is this part of the process? Like, is pain inevitable, or is it just a lack of giving it a meaning that actually propels us to a divine destiny? Or is it both?
It could be both. It could be, right? Anything could. Life is meaningless, but that shouldn't be confused with life being pointless. If life was pointless, there'd be no reason for us to be here. We should just go end it now because this is horrible if this is just what it is, right? But life being meaningless means you have opportunity to assign meaning to whatever you'd like. It's the reason that you might find fulfillment in something and I might think it's dumb. It's the reason somebody else will get joy and wealth and riches in one area and then the other person will be broke in another area. Meaning is everything in life. But it's really about, do you have problems that are worth solving? See, we're supposed to have problems. They're opportunities for growth. You only, and if you've ever noticed this, Jared, you only hit a problem whenever you're trying to expand capacity. If you're not trying to grow, you most likely don't have a lot of problems in your life. Your biggest problem might be like, I don't like my income. But get outside of that, I mean, what else really is there, right? Everything else is self-imposed. But if your biggest problem is I don't like my income and you decide to do nothing about it, guess what? Like, that's kind of it. But if you're saying, I don't like my income, I'm going to go build a business. Damn, now I got to figure out how to get clients. Now I got to figure out what to sell. Now I got to figure out where they are. Problems are the checkpoints to growth. And it's not about not having problems, it's about having quality problems to solve. Because everyone is going to have problems, but the quality of your problems is the privilege that you have to solve based on the life you're looking to fulfill.
I love how you put that. I had not heard that before. I have heard of the the mindset of like we should be flattered by our challenges, judge a man by the size of his problems. To this point, that's kind of what you're saying. If you got big problems and big challenges, so to speak, it's actually a really good sign, right?
100%. If you have big problems, it means you're aspiring to do great things. If you have small problems, it means you're not trying to do nearly enough in your life. Like the problem that I'll have with running multiple businesses are very different than the problems that a homeless guy will have. And it's not even that one problem is more important or less important, because that's actually the funny thing. All problems only have the level of importance to the people who have them, right? So my problem is just as important as the homeless guy's problem, and vice versa. His isn't better than mine or worse. The thing is that we're just getting different problems because we're in different places in our lives.
People out there listening to this that have a problem, a challenge, so to speak. Again, I'm using air quotes because the the problem is actually a golden ticket. It's not really a problem. It's actually an opportunity. What's the shift in their mind they need to look at that? How have you shown people that have, again, I'm using air quotes, problems, to look at it in a way where it's the portal to expansion?
So there's two really, really important factors that I've seen in changing how people see problems. One is asking them a very simple question. I'll ask you, I'm curious what you might say, is this: do you fix problems or do you outgrow problems?
Judging by the context, probably the latter, I'm guessing. That's the right answer, and that's how I think I've switched that in the last several years, especially because I was always just running around looking for the next problem to solve because my life was filled with problems since I was a young boy. So I was just kind of trained to just go and be a problem solver because there's inevitably a laundry list of issues that are showing up at my doorstep, whether I like it or not.
Of course. And so a lot of people think you have to fix problems. You have to solve problems. But if people actually paused and waited half a second before they went into fix it problem solver mode, you would actually figure out and you would see the truth that you cannot fix a problem. You cannot solve a problem. You can only outgrow it. And then the question is, well, how does that actually work? Well, every problem you have is because of a lack of something in your life. Is a lack of skills, a lack of knowledge, a lack of tools, strategies, actions, habits, environment, I could give you the whole things you might lack, and it doesn't really matter. What matters is what are you specifically lacking? And then what you also notice is that every time you might have had a problem, if you've learned something or you've grown as a person, it's never a problem ever again, right? So a very simple analogy or example, not an analogy, a very simple example would be, Jared, you and I are hanging out and we drank the last of the milk and we're flipping out, man, because the milk was there. Somebody put it there. We've never had to go and get milk. And now all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. We're out of milk. How do we get more milk? Shit, I don't know. Where does milk even come from? Can we make milk? Like you start asking all these weird questions, but you get down to it and it's like, I don't know what to do. So now what do you have to do? Well, you got to figure out, okay, where does milk come from? So we'll go on Google. All of a sudden we figure out, oh, it comes from a cow. Well, how do I personally get milk from a cow? And it's like, well, you have to own a cow, you have to milk a cow, you have to be a farmer, you have to raise a cow from a calf, you have to feed it this and that for years and years, and then it starts producing milk. And it's like, well, shit, Jared, we don't have the time for that. We could, but we probably don't have the time. What's a simpler solution? Google, how does the rest of the world get milk? Most people go to a supermarket. Supermarket, what the hell is that? Oh, it's a store we could get milk? No way. Okay. How do we get to a supermarket? Well, you could walk, you could run, you could bike, you could bus, you could drive. What can we do, Jared? Oh, well, we could take the car. Well, do we know how to drive yet? No, you got to go to driver's ed. Like you see, I could go through all of these things, but as we start solving all of these different problems that come up, guess what? We got a driver's license, we have a car, and now we know that you could always get milk at the store. Finding milk and running out of milk is never ever a problem ever again in your life because you have now evolved as a person and learned skill sets, strategies, tools, and all of a sudden it's not a thing. And so coming over problems or understanding problems to shift it to more of an empowering state is to ask, how must I evolve as a person so this problem ceases to exist in my life? How do I elevate myself above it? And the other part, if you're struggling with all of that, is just saying kind of what you said. What's the opportunity in this? Because you only have a problem because there's an opportunity on the other side for growth. So, what is that opportunity for me? Well, if we use the stupid scenario, it's the opportunity is you never run out of milk and you always have milk with your cereal. All you got to do is figure this one thing out. That's a pretty good reason for me.
I love this idea of out expanding your problems. In fact, even as I've kind of grown and evolved in the last couple of years, the things that I fretted about, as they say, don't sweat the small stuff, I don't fret
Mm,
about today. And now I'm helping people in that position. And it's interesting because that's kind of my response too. You'll bring up a mindset shift, a reframe, and they immediately kind of retract back. Well, what about this and what about this and all these like little nuanced tactical things. And in my mind, I'm like, those aren't even issues. You can have that solved just like that. But it's not about solving it; it's about outgrowing it. And to their credit, they just haven't done that yet. So you ask the question, what's the lesson? Is that the ultimate breakthrough in that moment? Is it a pause? Is it a reflection? Or is it maybe all of the above to really get the most amount of horsepower out of that air quotes problem?
mm. There's so many different strategies. You could pause. Sometimes I like to give people when they're really dealing with too many. So there's also different levels, right? Some people can face a problem and like it's somewhat navigatable, but some people get so overwhelmed because they've let a lot of problems build and now they try to dissociate every chance they get by like smoking weed or watching porn or drinking or playing video games or whatever the higher dopamine things are. And so depending on where you're at in that problem scale, I would give somebody a different strategy, right? Like if you have one solo problem that you're really focused on, I'd probably say, so what's the opportunity? Let's go through that. If you're somebody that's facing multiple problems, I'd probably tell you get it out of your head and onto paper. Like journal every thought you have. It doesn't matter what it is, just journal it out. So the act of writing and pulling it out physically of your head, I would bet any of your listeners, if they're struggling with that, if they did it, they would feel clearer like that. And then the other part could also be challenging yourself reflectively and saying, why am I encountering the problems I'm encountering, especially if it's a repeat problem, which is something I had to do when I was in multiple relationships and got cheated on multiple times. Because at that point, much like, well, aside from Taylor Swift, I won't blame my exes. I will then blame myself and say, if 5 girls I've dated have cheated on me, it's definitely not them. So what am I doing that is contributing to this problem reoccurring and showing up in my life? What am I refusing to learn? What am I refusing to look at? And if you notice in all of these things, aside from the just brain dump it, every strategy requires you to do something very specific, which is ask quality questions. If you cannot ask quality questions, you'll be riddled with ill quality answers because you're always going to have questions and the brain will always answer them. The question is, are you asking good enough questions to get better answers?
Curious, what did you find out with your string of ex girlfriends? What was the story that was playing inside of your head that you had to identify and probably delete?
There was definitely a few of them. One of them was so I this is kind of relevant to my background is like when I was growing up, I was very heavily bullied. I was outcasted. I really didn't have any friends, and I couldn't even get a girlfriend until I was like 19 years old. And so in that, I had a severe lack of confidence. I had anxious attachment styles. I didn't value myself. I didn't have a sense of self, most importantly. Like I was a chameleon. If you liked it, I liked it. I would do it. If you wanted to try this, I would try it because you liked it and I knew that would be my way in. And so there was a multitude of these things. I think the biggest one just came down to like not having any standards. In all of those problems, the boil it down to one thing, zero standards for myself. And so, because of all of these issues, I never talked to women. I wasn't comfortable talking to women. And usually, the only women that tend to talk to a guy that's uncomfortable talking to women are highly aggressive women. And a lot of highly aggressive women, sorry for any of you who might be listening, don't typically have very good morals and standards. I don't want to generalize, but that was my experience with like five very aggressive women.
We don't have any of that listening to this show, so you have to worry about that.
Spectacular. So, guys, you know what I'm talking about. So, but with that being said, I was not picking my girls. I was letting them pick me. If I saw any flags or red flags that I did not like, I was excusing them because my standards and boundaries sucked because I was so insecure. I had such a lack of confidence and my self worth was little to none. And so I realized that was one contributing factor. The other big contributing factor was that I also was trying to figure out my life. And in doing that, I wasn't really giving proper attention to my relationships in a few different ways. And in extending these relationships probably past the expiration date and not being super in it and putting my focus elsewhere, I also recognized I wasn't meeting a lot of my women's needs. And, that's not an excuse for them to go cheap, but they were getting something elsewhere. They were getting emotional fulfillment elsewhere, which usually led into physical fulfillment, which usually led into the obvious, like, oh my God, you cheated on me again. And so it started being like, how am I contributing to the state of my relationships? And ultimately, what I decided after the last girl was I'm going to take time for myself. I need to, because I haven't learned how to, like, who the hell I am, how to be me, what I need, what I want, what I care about. Like, what makes me a good man, what makes me a good person, like what are my standards, what are my boundaries, how do I need to show up powerfully, like what how do I build my confidence. All of these things were things that I avoided, and I avoided them by continuously getting into relationships, and the universe kept on saying like you're not ready for this shit, so here's another lesson that you refuse to learn. It kept punching me in the face. And I was, listen, I'll tell you, I'm a great fighter because I would get punched in the face by this girl cheating on me, and then I'd be like, give me another, let's go. And then boom. And now we're like 6 rounds in where I got KO'd 6 times. I'm like, let's go for round 7. you know,
You're a glutton for punishment.
we could be if we need to.
I hear yourself saying there are things I needed to recognize, I needed to pull back from because they weren't me, and there's also things I needed to do. I find that fascinating in this, this whole conversation of personal development. There's things we need to subtract out of the equation, but there's also things we need to do. I'm curious your opinion on this. Is there one that's more important? Do they work hand in hand? Do you need to subtract before you add? Where do you start with people? Do you start kind of peeling back the onion, or are we starting to kind of add some new tools to the plate?
So, have you ever heard the saying "up shit's creek without a paddle"?
Yes, we use in Minnesota. We use it all the time.
Oh, I love it. And I hope you got a lot of Minnesotites on here.
We do.
Minnesotians? I don't know. What's the word?
Minnesotites, no Minnesotans.
So listen up, you Minnesotans. You're gonna love
By
this
the
one.
way, you're from Staten Island, so I mean we're about the same latitude. It's probably fairly similar.
Yeah, I mean, listen. I got parks and woods and stuff here. We're good.
That's right.
So I've heard that saying. My parents used to say it a bit when I was growing up. And they would say, "Oh, you're gonna be up shit's creek without a paddle. Don't do that," or whatever the case may be. And I didn't really understand it until I got older, because old people and their sayings. And then and then you get a little older, and you're like, "Oh, it's a
It's
good
not a
one.
bad saying.
It's not a bad saying."
No.
So eventually, I learned what it means, right? And what do you know it to mean, Jared?
I would say you're just getting in a spot where you don't want to be, and it's going to be harder to get out than just not go there at all.
Yeah, great interpretation. You said it better than I could. So you imagine what it is you're in this boat, you have no paddle, and the boat is a representation of you. The river is the representation of life. And so what it really says is that this river is going to push you. You're going in a direction and you have no way to stop it, and not only do you have no way to stop it, which is kind of fine, right? You can't stop life regardless. But the worst part about being in Schitt's Creek without a paddle is you have no way to navigate what life is throwing at you. So it's okay to be in the river. The biggest problem is you can't navigate in the river, right? So I said, okay, you don't need a paddle, but you could use an oar. And so I came up with the oar concept. And the oar is how I transformed my life. And the oar stands for ownership, acceptance, and responsibility. So when you're asking what are the components that people need to start making a change, it's those three. Period. Just like that, though. It has to be in that order. And so what I mean by that is why ownership is first. Ownership is the aspect that you have to acknowledge that everything that you have done or have not done has contributed to the state of your life. Period. I don't care why you did what you did or why you didn't do. Just own that shit. It's yours. So then that brings you to this place of empowerment because when you have problems that are yours and you know that you've contributed to your life, it brings all of the power back to you because you can recognize you're in that circumstance because of you. The acceptance piece is that. Stop trying to make sense of things. Stop trying to give reasons. Well, I couldn't be happy during this time period in my life because I was bullied, or I couldn't be happy at this time because I got cheated. Doesn't matter. Everything that's happened has happened. Let's accept it. Let's own your part in it. And then let's accept that it's all done. Your past is in the past. Your present is right here, right now, in front of you. And if you are so focused on what you cannot own and what you cannot accept, you will miss your present. And then that last piece is asking, your life has been whatever it's been, but what do you want it to be now? That is your responsibility to get the outcomes in the life that you desire. It's not about what has happened, it is about what can happen. Because at any time, at any moment, in any given day and second of your life, you can snap your finger and decide that it'll never be the same ever again if you do not want it to. But that is all your responsibility. Nobody's responsible to give you anything you want or any type of life you would like to have. It falls fully within your bounds of how you operate, of how you want to look at things, and what you're willing to do to get there. So, ownership, acceptance, and responsibility. And if you do those three in that order, you will still be in Schitt's Creek, but you will have an oar and you could steer yourself around it.
But you really just kind of that was my testimony in the last 3 years. And I'll be the first to say 3 years ago, especially coming out of COVID, if you asked me, give me the state of the world, how do you see the world? I would have said dark, bleak, going down, you know what road, and there ain't no stopping this train. And that dictated my actions thereafter.
Mm.
And then I started to change. There are many things, and I resonate with everything that you say, but it's the same world that's still kind of crazy. You're still in Schitt's Creek, as you say, but all of a sudden it looks totally different. If the fact that it still is going on, the world doesn't have to be perfect because I get a say, and it's such an empowering stance. I love how you articulated that. That's just such a powerful tool. I gotta ask, is you deal with successful people, entrepreneurs, CEOs, like what part of this process is the most difficult, and like what's the most dangerous narrative that even high achievers have that you have to try to like unwrite or rewrite?
A lot of it still comes down to perspective, funny enough, right? It's kind of like what I was saying to you before about how problems, everybody has them, but they're just different caliber or different scale. And so a lot of the successful clients that I work with are successful, but they're trying to figure out how to become more successful. How come, they have difficulty with communication at work? How come they struggle to keep a relationship? What do they want to do next? Like I've dealt with people who have exited companies or are in the process of exiting companies and like, I don't even know what the hell I'm going to do now. Like I'm selling my company. I'm going to go travel for 8 months, not make any money. And I don't need to because I've just exited with a few million in the bank. And like, what the hell do I do? And it's funny because I feel like when I talk to a lot of these guys, what I'm really seeing is most of their problems are stemming from like they haven't built a life of alignment. They've chased specific goals. And the problem with chasing a goal is that if you don't know the point of a goal, you're probably going to hit your goal, but it's going to be unfulfilling because the point of a goal is not about achieving the goal. The point of the goal is to challenge you to evolve into the person capable of living that goal out. And so when you look at that, then you ask, well, did they get to evolve? Like you made $1 million, but who did you become in the process of making 1 million? And a lot of people can hit their targets. And let's even differentiate it. A lot of people can hit their targets, but they never really crack down on what the goal should be in the process of getting there. Like you want to make $1 million, but you spend zero time with your kids, your wife divorced you, your employees hate you. What's the point of the $1 million at this point? Like what did you even want it for? And so a lot of the times I see many of my successful guys have been chasing things purely for a status symbol. And here's a little secret, and I've struggled with this myself. 99% of high performers are high performers because they're trying to prove that they are good enough, because they come from a mindset of not enough, lack, chip on their shoulder. Dad told you sucked, society told you sucked, somebody somewhere told you sucked, and you've now spent the rest of your days trying to prove them wrong. And in doing that, you didn't spend the time building yourself into a person you are proud of, but you did achieve the thing. And so that doesn't matter as much. I mean, everything always comes down to perspective. During COVID, I was a firefighter. The biggest thing I loved about COVID and being a firefighter was I would have to drive what would usually take me 2.5 hours, 22 minutes. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I hope the roads stay like this after COVID. Of course, they wouldn't, but I was like, this is phenomenal. And so you could find perspective in anything if you're willing to look hard enough.
What is the perspective? I don't want to drop like the ultimate question on you, like what is the point of life? I don't want to go there, but like what are we striving for? Because again, we live in this world of personal development. You're definitely in a deep thread with people. What is the ultimate goal? I mean, it's kind of a silly cliche question, but I get accused of saying, like why are you striving all the time? I've gotten that from like, what's the point? Why are you pushing so hard? And again, I think you're articulating it well. It's the journey, it's the evolution, it's the utility, as Rene Rodriguez has talked about. In your opinion, like what is the goal which can drive people to where they are today, where they get a breakthrough, they get an aha to say, now, since that's my goal, now I have like a clear path on what this life is all about.
I don't know why people think that question of what is the meaning of life is a difficult one to answer. I feel bold enough to say like I know the answer because I actually think it's really ridiculously simple. And anybody who wants to call me arrogant, feel free. To me, this makes sense. There is no meaning of life. That's the meaning of life. There is no meaning of life. So the meaning of life is whatever you want it to be. Like there isn't a metric. If there was, and this is how I know that my answer is correct. If there was a metric, no, seriously, Jared, follow me on this for 1 second. So trust me.
You're making sense so far. I'm buying what you're selling, brother.
If there was a metric, we would have a tangible meaning of life. If everybody in the world right now was saying, I either need to become the world's greatest finger painter or I should be depressed, then we would know there is actually an inherent meaning of life because everybody's going for one thing and it's tangible. Like you and I can never argue that this isn't a pen because it is. It doesn't matter what you think. There is a fact that this is a pen, and everyone who sees this, as long as they know what a pen is, will acknowledge this is a pen. I could go to 8 billion people on this planet. If they know what a pen is, they'll all agree with me. If you ask people what the meaning of life is, you will get 8 billion different answers, which means there is no tangible answer. And if there's no tangible answer, it means that there isn't one. And if there isn't one, it means what? It means fill in the damn blank. And if the answer is fill in the blank, who needs to fill in the blank? Is it me? No. You might not like what I think the meaning of life is. You might tell me it's something else. And because of that, I would know we can't agree on it, which is fine, but that just means that there isn't a specific thing to do. Now, is there specific ways you should show up in life? 100%. That would be tangible. In fact, that's how we get societal norms. How come most of us can agree it's probably a bad thing to kill people? Because as a society, we have collectively agreed being a good person, not doing harm to others is of utmost importance to us. And you'll get maybe 7.99 billion people that agree with that. You have like 0.1% that'll be like, yeah, we should kill people. But aside from that, you can get a collective agreement. So that's how you know that that's like a standard and moral, and we could all kind of be in agreement. But when you come to meaning, most people do not have the same answer, and they never will, because that's the meaning of life. Create meaning.
I hear exactly what you're saying. If I could re-articulate that, and I
Yeah,
want to ask you one more question, we'll
go
land this
for it.
plane. It sounds as if you're saying it's a very disempowering, depressing answer. There is no meaning. But what I hear you saying is it's actually the most empowering thing you could possibly say, because it gives you the power to dictate then the meaning, and then for you to decide how you want to co-create your own reality. So on one side, it sounds very disenchanting, but yet on the other side, it's like, no, it's the most empowering answer to that question.
And just to build on that real quick, I know we're coming up on time. The only people that would feel disempowered by that answer are the people that can't come to their own conclusion, because they were hoping that you would tell them something that would, like, I've had coaching clients discontinue working with me because we've kind of come to the end of our time, because I've taught them a lot of things and they didn't take action. And literally they were like, Vin, I think I'm ready to graduate. I keep coming to you thinking you're going to tell me something that's going to change the entire way I see life. And I'm just realizing as I keep showing up and I'm not putting in the work, you're not going to tell me anything different, because you're just going to remind me to go do the work. And I'm like, that's correct, because you can't change your life if you don't do something different. But that's the same thing with this, right? Like, you're searching for what is the meaning of life because you're too scared to create your own, because you might not reach it. And that is scary and difficult.
Good coaches will do that. They'll put the answer to that question in your plate. They can't answer that. You may go to them and say, tell me what the answer is, but they can't, because they're not you. And you end up going around and around and around. That's probably where you got to with some of these people.
Oh yeah. Listen, sometimes you just got to end the coaching because like, hey, listen, I think we've reached our time together. It's not that I've taught you everything I could teach you. It's just you haven't taken anything I've taught you and done anything with it. So we can't actually get to that next stage in coaching because you
Right.
haven't done anything different. You're still mostly the same person. Like, I would maintain I can help anybody as long as they want help. But you can't help other people. You can't help people if they won't do anything with the help.
But you can't decide for them what their specific meaning,
Never.
calling, purpose is, to your own point.
Never.
That's a phenomenal way to answer that question. And I think that's a great place to stop. But I do want to ask you this one more question. If you could replace like the storyline that's in people's minds that gets them stuck and prevents them from going to the next level or whatever their next level is, what is like one new narrative that you could implant? If you could like physically implant in their mind, in their narrative, what would that one be?
Subconsciously, most people experience 95% of everything that they've experienced from the day before, the week before, the month before, the year before. And so most people are just playing negative narratives in their mind. And so if I were to put something in their mind, it might just be something as simple as a positive mantra. Like, I like to tell myself, every day in every way, life gets better and better for me. And the more that I say it, and the more that I just think about that, and the more that I just remind myself of it, seemingly the better my life gets. When I was struggling with my ego, one of the biggest things that I read that really helped me again was like from Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, Rome's greatest emperor, used to have a slave. Kind of funny, but he used to have a slave that would sit and follow him around all day. Jared, I shit you not, this is hilarious. He would have this slave follow him around all day and whisper in his ear multiple times throughout the day, like all the time, "You're just a man," over and over and over. So he never grew bigger than how he's supposed to show up, how he's supposed to serve others as the king, how he's supposed to consider his people. Because most people get lost in ego and arrogance, or some people just get lost in general through their own negative thoughts and their perpetuations of a terrible life from their negative frameworks. So put in a good mantra. Or if you're struggling with ego or arrogance, remind yourself you're a man. And those are some of the strategies that I've used that have really even helped change my own life.
Beautiful, my brother. We are out of time. Fantastic stuff. This is dynamite. I really hope that our listeners were in tune to this conversation. And if you missed it and were distracted, go back and listen to this conversation again. There's some bombs in here. I appreciate you, my friend. Where can people find more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, check me out on the socials, Vin Infante, or you could go to the website. I got a bunch of free resources, a newsletter, a free mission board resource. It's www.vincentinfante.life. You can check it out there. And that's it. I'm all over Google. So if you're really confused on all of it, just Google my name. I'm around.
Dude, bomb dropper.
Appreciate you, brother.
Nice work, man.
Thanks. Had a great time.